A new tropical depression has developed south of Cuba, and it is forecast to strike the state of Florida by Monday morning. Good evening, I'm Mike Nasa with the latest on the tropics. As of 11 p.m. Friday night, we do have a new tropical depression. This is Tropical Depression 4 sitting there south of Cuba. We've been watching the tropical wave interact with the greater Antilles and move over Cuba. It has now emerged in the northwestern Caribbean Sea south of Cuba, and it is moving west-northwest towards the Gulf of Mexico. Here's the latest as of 11 p.m. Eastern Time. This is Tropical Depression 4. It's at 21.4 north, 79.7 west. Winds are 30 miles per hour, and it's moving west-northwest at 17. Now, what we think is going to happen over the next 24, 48, 72 hours is that it's going to feel a weakness in the high pressure to the north. So this high is steering it to the west-northwest. The high is going to back off because of a trough over the eastern United States weakening it. So the troughiness weakens the high pressure, and that will allow this system to slide northwest, north, and then northeast, and make landfall sometime either late Sunday or early Monday in western Florida. Now, it could be Apalachicola, it could be down here near Tampa, but it looks like, in general, somewhere in the Big Bend region, very close to the area of Keaton Beach, where Hurricane Idalia made a Category 3 major hurricane landfall in August of 2023, just a year ago. Now, it doesn't look like this is going to be a major hurricane, but it could be a hurricane. The National Hurricane Center brings it right on the edge of Tropical Storm Category 1 hurricane, so this could make landfall early Monday as a hurricane in Florida. Right now, we have a tropical storm warning for the Dry Tortugas, and then from Cape Sable all the way to Boca Grande, and then we have tropical storm watches here for areas of the Keys, and then further north from Suwannee River all the way up to the Big Bend of Florida. Again, those will be adjusted as we start to get some idea of the wind field of this tropical cyclone. Here's the water vapor imagery, and again, right in here, this little pop-up storm is where the center appears to be. It's not extremely well organized. It's only a 30-mile-per-hour tropical depression, but through time, it will tighten up. It should make landfall over areas there of Cuba, and right now, if you look at the Cuban radar, this is out of Cienfuegos. A lot of the heavy rainfall is still offshore. So again, it's going to be a wet ride for Cuba, but again, because it's in its formative stages, it's not going to feel the effect of land the same way a strong hurricane will. In other words, if this were a Category 4 hurricane and it moved straight across Cuba, it would weaken dramatically because the center would get all disrupted. But when it already has a disrupted center because it's only a tropical depression, it ain't going to have much effect on it. If anything, it could actually tighten it up a little bit. So we'll see this as it moves over areas here near the Straits of Florida, south of the Keys. It should move squarely over Dry Tortugas and then into the Gulf of Mexico. Now, here are the European ensemble models, and they really like to slow this thing down. So we have this motion, but then watch what happens here. The system strikes Florida, and it looks like it's going to just pivot on out, right? No. Look what happens. It gets left behind. The trough leaves it behind, and it just drags somewhere like a spaghetti on a plate off the southeast coast. Do you know the type of rainfall we'd see with that? Ugh. Then this is the, whatchamacallit? This is the European. Oh, this is the European too, 18Z. They're both European models. Okay. But look at again how they're in general good agreement, but then the slowdown occurs over North Florida and Georgia. Now, if it did become a hurricane, it would weaken over land, but it doesn't matter the intensity of a storm when it comes to the heavy rainfall, and that's going to be a real issue here with this system. Now, here's the HWRF model. This is as of Friday night, 18Z. It brings our system over the Dry Tortugas on Saturday, strengthens it on Sunday into a hurricane, Category 1, makes landfall early Monday, and then watch what happens. It drags along the Carolina coastline. This is Tuesday. This is Wednesday. This is Thursday. Still sitting over Georgia. That would not be good news for heavy rainfall. That system would just pool in and just meander and meander. Now, that's the H-Wharf model. The other hurricane model, the HMON, wants to get it out of here. It brings it to a hurricane intensity, boom, makes landfall, and then that's Monday. By Tuesday, it's out over areas of South Carolina. By Wednesday, it's up over here of North Carolina and then out. So if we had to choose a solution, you'd want the HMON model here, which gets it out of here, instead of those prolific flooding rains. Where landfall occurs, it's still too soon to say with any certainty, as the system's still in its formative stages. And again, if it makes landfall further south, it's quicker, has less time over water. If it's further to the west here, it has more time to become a hurricane, or maybe even a more potent hurricane before coming in. The National Hurricane Center has it inland Monday morning, early Monday morning, the wee hours of the morning, in that region right there. As of 11 p.m. Friday night, that's the forecast from the National Hurricane Center. And if you look at where that is, that's Fish Creek, Steinhatchee, the Big Bend, a more rural area. You look at the towns and locations there. You got Woodyard Cemetery, Worth Morgan Cemetery, Indian Springs Cemetery, Sandhill Cemetery. Jeez, Florida. Cemeteries everywhere in this area. But I mean, that's what I mean. It's for Florida in the year 2024, this is as rural as you're going to get. So it's kind of a good news, bad news thing. If it is going to be a hurricane with the wind, you want it to stay away from Tallahassee, you want it to stay away from Gainesville and the higher populations. But then these areas along the coast, like Keaton Beach, they get slammed. Perry, you get slammed. Live Oak, even towards Valdosta. But then as it pulls in, the rainfall becomes the threat. So again, it's too early to pinpoint a direct landfall, but anybody in this area needs to be getting ready for a potential impact from what could be a hurricane. Now, the rest of the Atlantic, I'm watching this tropical wave in the central Atlantic because it's not an invest area yet, and we have more waves leaving. But this one in particular has piqued the interest of the GFS model. And let me show you what I mean. This is the 18Z GFS. Now, watch what happens down here in the southeast, okay? We'll have our tropical system strike the state of Florida. Boom, there's a hurricane. Then it pulls off the eastern seaboard, and the GFS has it strengthening again and making landfall in North Carolina as a stronger hurricane by August 8th. That's next Thursday, okay? So that's a potential possibility down the road. But watch what happens here. I'm going to go down just a little bit. Watch what happens very carefully in the Gulf of Mexico. Okay, so there's our system we're watching now. This would be Thursday, August 8th. There's our system making landfall as a hurricane, probably a Category 2 in North Carolina. And then watch the Gulf of Mexico right here. Up comes that tropical wave we've been watching, and look at that. It is a major hurricane strike on southeastern Louisiana. And that would be a very, very bad situation. That would be sometime around August 14th. So while it's still a long way away, that's the GFS model as of 18Z, and that's from the wave we're watching in the central Atlantic. And if you actually look at the 12Z model run, watch what happens. There goes our first system, and then here comes that tropical wave. Watch it. Boom. Major hurricane into Texas. That was 12Z. So the 18Z was Louisiana, the 12Z was Texas. What about at 6Z on Friday? What did the models show? Did it show that? There goes our first system. Boom. A hurricane in South Texas. So I'm watching this wave because I know it's still early and it's only one model, but this is the time of year to where something like this can come under the radar and end up being a much more serious threat than the system we're watching now south of Cuba. Are conditions favorable for our systems? Oh yeah, look at this low wind shear in the Gulf, low wind shear in the Caribbean and the Atlantic. For that wave, look at, there's our wave that I mentioned in the central Atlantic, favorable conditions. And our system here south of Cuba, favorable conditions. As long as they stay over water, they could strengthen. And so hurricane season is getting more and more active, and we're going to have to be ready for it. Along the Florida West Coast, storm surge will be a threat, 2 to 4 feet, Charlotte Harbor, Tampa Bay, all the way to Suwannee River. And again, if the system gets stronger, we could see those numbers go up. But right now, heavy rain is the threat. This area here, from Jacksonville through Wilmington, you guys are really going to have to be ready for 8, 10, 12 inches of rainfall, perhaps. if the system slows down. We just don't know yet what it has in store, but for the west coast of Florida, at least, 6 to 8 inches, no doubt. So that'll do it for the tropics this evening, Friday night. A brand new tropical depression. Again, this hurricane season is forecast to be a hyperactive season. And when you have hyperactive seasons, like we've already had a Category 5 hurricane, Beryl, in July, you got to be ready for a lot of activity, and it's going to come fast. Like August 20th, that switch flips, boom, and it's like, what is going on? So don't be surprised now that we're in August that things are getting active, because they are. So again, if you're along the Florida West Coast, get ready for heavy rain and gusty winds with a developing tropical depression south of Cuba. I'm Mike Naso, and I'll talk to you next time with more on the tropics.